Hey, how's it going, everyone? This is Ina from Ina C Watercolor. Today I have a special video for you because I'm taking you guys outside of the studio to a very special place that I went and painted at with a group of wonderful artists from the Northwest Watercolor Society. So the place we painted at is called the Georgetown Steam Plant, which was an old steam power plant built at the beginning of 20th century, I believe, that used to supply all of the electricity to the cable cars in Seattle area. Of course, when we first got there, I was just so blown away by it. How can you not, right? Everything here is like steampunk, dystopian vibe, just like to the next level. So I took a ton of photos and videos while everybody else already gets settled. I was probably the last to set up my easel. So in the end, I settled with this particular view, kind of facing the doorway with these large vertical turbines to my right. But I think the painting motif is really about these large shapes because this really cool pipe. So are these vertical copper tubes that I thought would be a really cool device in the composition to carry the viewer's attention up and down the artwork. I'm also fond of this entryway lighting and the reflective floor, which will be a focal point as well when the viewer's attention follows this tube down here and land in this area. I will want to capture some of the details on the turbine as well, but maybe really emphasizing these vertical copper tubes. So is this a wheel at the bottom, which also kind of break up that super strong kind of vertical movements. So there is a grounding place for the viewer to look at. So that is the design for the painting. For this demo, I will not spend too much time on the drawing process itself, which took me a while to get right because of all of these elements in the scene, in the perspectives. But in retrospect, I don't know how I would otherwise be able to capture the vastness of this space within the canvas if I were not to be painting on site. So that is really the beauty of in plein air painting. You're able to kind of just grab and reposition the objects in the scene to make it work for your composition, as versus having to stitch together multiple photos in order to fit everything in the scene, but still don't know if everything will look balanced in the composition. Okay, so here is the drawing finished. I think I'm quite happy with it. So with regard to this whole painting process, the biggest challenge I would say is working with a scene made of so many neutral colored objects. All of these objects in the scene is either beige, gray, or like a cream color. But I do like in this scene in particular, there is a tension, I would say, between the natural light through the doorway and the artificial light, which is more like an orange warm light coming from one of the structures to the right. So I'm definitely leveraging that warm yellow color as part of the visual interest. And also some of the objects, like this wheel has some red accent on it, which is really useful. That gave me an idea for maybe I will add some more red accent in other parts of the structure, just to kind of carry the viewer's attention forward. Now that the first coat is largely dried up, I've pre-mixed some shades of gray on my palette, but I think the key for keeping all of these neutrally colored objects interesting is that I try to avoid mixing my pigments too much. Maybe just dip into the paint and not blend it too much before I apply it to the paper. So I started from the upper left, where that area is largely a background, but this background is not flat. I want to make sure that maybe using some wet on wet techniques, I could depict the light that enters from the tall windows up there on the second floor. and also add some interest in the darker corner, and back up to the vertical turbine because I don't want the turbine shape to get blended with the background too much, but it actually helps to have some joineries, I would say, between the turbine wall to the background. The viewer's eyes can travel left to right as well as up and down. And then just moving down to the floor area. So for these walls, there is a more lit surface on the left and a more darker and much shaded surface on the right. I was really dreading of painting this large tube because this tube has this complex geometry that kind of like goes vertical and then turn into horizontal again. And it has this like rounded corner, but also a flat bottom. Well, I decided to just go for it and maybe try using a bit of spot wetting to avoid the shape sticking out too much against this dark background. It was not my finest work, but we'll make it work. However, just problem solve and move on. Now that we have addressed these large shapes for the background, we can now move on to the more kind of like isolated shape of the turbine itself. I do want to create a bit of visual interest to the upper right. So I used a pretty high contrast paint to depict some details on the turbine. But you see me like switching over to actually painting the copper tubes first, and then finishing the rest of the turbine area. That's because these copper tubes can be a little bit confusing when painting them as entirely negative shape. Painting these lines would just help me figure out where the background is versus the pipes are. So I can leave out the pipes, making sure I don't cover them up by accident. Yeah, my goal for this composition is just that there are these like large shapes and objects like the turbine, the wheel, the pipes. So within each object, I wanted to use more of the wet on wet technique. So they will have more of a soft blended edges, but between the objects, they should have some separation. Okay, now so we are getting started with the dark tone wash, which is primarily some of the objects behind this wheel and some of the shapes in the background that suggest, and there is a walkway and it had some railings on them, and adding some railings for the turbine and some metal structures on the pipe as well. Last but not least, adding that final touch of the silhouetted figures. I think that has really brought the painting together, don't you think? There are a lot of pipes to my left-hand side as well. You use some dry brush marks here, so it can kind of echo what's going on with the copper pipe on the right. Just adding finishing touches of white gouache, a little bit at a time. Cool. I think we have got our painting. So here is the finished painting, and I'm back to the studio. Let's do a quick critique on it. So overall, I think just working with the wet on wet within each large area and treating the gray and beige color as if they're not a flat color, these techniques worked out. And so the painting has a lot of energy and doesn't seem flat. I do think though that initially my plan for separating these key objects like This wheel, I think it's successful. But when it comes to this large turbine, I think it's kind of lost its outline. I particularly like the reflection and the silhouetted figures and all of these strong vertical lines across the painting, starting from this copper tube to some of the reflections on the floor. This area behind the wheel here is a little bit unclear what that is. So I would have been better off, I think, if I just keep it relatively flat. But overall, very happy with the painting. My biggest takeaway for painting the industrial motif is that, yes, it's helpful to baking some of these organic shapes like this rounded shapes, some curvatures, so that it's not all straight lines. But also for even straight lines, it helps to not do 100% straight here, so it can still leave a sense of spontaneity and looseness in the finished painting. So go ahead and freehand. There's no harm to that. Okay, that is the end of our painting demonstration today. I hope it's inspiring and useful to you guys, but let me know in the comment section below regardless. And I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye.